Hi, this is John Harch, and welcome to episode 15 of Left Turn at Albuquerque. Today we'll be taking a look at the last, so far, of the multi-disc Blu-ray sets, Looney Tunes Mouse Chronicles, the Chuck Jones collection. And we'll actually be doing it all in one episode. The first disc focuses in on Chuck's first major star, Sniffles. Yeah, I know. The second disc has the appearances of his rodent duo, Hubie and Boit, Bert, plus there'll be 11 bonus cartoons, as well as a couple of editions of my own.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I should have turned left at Albuquerque.
Yeah, originally I did have an episode for each of the discs, but thanks to a little hard drive episode, I figured let me go ahead and get this done since we have some big things coming up in the next couple of months. On August 28, 2012, Warner tried something new after the Superstars DVD experiment. This time they came up with a 2-disc package, either on Blu-ray or DVD, concentrating not on one character, but a couple of characters with similar characteristics, namely, they're mice. As an added feature, anytime you can get Chuck Jones's name and title, the better. I think Chuck Jones is the single most important innovator in American animation history, whose name is not Walt Disney. His career at Warner Brothers had several distinct phases. He started out as an animator in the mid-30s. When he first became a director in 1937, he tried to make his cartoons very similar to the kind Disney made. Somewhere along the way, someone said to him, "Chuck, you should make the cartoons that you want to make." This led to his early to mid-40s, what I call experimental period, where the backgrounds became very abstract and the gags became more out there. By the late 40s through the next 10 years, he moved into his cinematic phase, where he used the medium to its fullest, either to tell epic stories, those with verbal mastery, mostly aided by Michael Maltese, and even breaking the bounds of the template, things like Buck 'em Up, One Froggy Evening, What's Opera Doc. Then after he moved over to MGM, he ended up making TV history with a little story about a Grinch. He certainly deserves that career achievement Oscar. See, Quentin approves. So all of the tunes of these characters were directed by Jones and highlight the two very different approaches his career took. The Sniffles cartoons represent the Chuck as Disney era, nice, sweet, even a bit cloying. The Hubie and Boit Bert tunes show his evolution into his experimental mode and onto the master gagman he became. Now the set is a little lopsided. They have the 12 Sniffles cartoons all by themselves on disc 1. Then after the 7 Hubie and Bert cartoons, they give us the 11 extra cartoons revolving around mice from several other of the directors from all throughout Warner Brothers toon history. So I'll mention how I would have balanced the set out, and like I said, I'll throw in a bonus cartoon for each disc. So as noted, disc 1 centers on Sniffles the Mouse. Many of these appeared frequently in syndication and on TBS's afternoon cartoon show back in the 80s. Just about all of these had the blue ribbon reissue card, except the first 2 and the last 1. Rich Hogan was involved in writing all but one of the first 9. I'll make note if anyone else did the writing. First is Naughty Button Mice, released on May 20th, 1939. Sniffles has a cold, hence his name, so after dark he goes to find a cold remedy, and he finds one with a fairly large alcohol content. This leads to his bonding with an electric razor. Cutesy factor is low thanks to the alcohol. The whole short is about them being drunk. Jerry Beck does the sole commentary track on the disc for this tune, where we find out Margaret Hill does the voice of Sniffles.
I got a cold in my head.
Restoration is very nice, just cleaning up the main characters. Next is Little Brother Rat, released on September 2nd, 1939. People probably weren't in a great frame of mind thanks to what happened the day before. And in this tune, Sniffles even gets a featuring card. Our hero takes part in a scavenger hunt and has to get an owl's egg to win. But always lurking is the cat. And Father Owl. I mean, who thought an owl could be so menacing? Eesh. There's a little bit more cleanup of the backgrounds on this one in the restoration. Sniffles and the Bookworm came out exactly 3 months later, December 2nd, 1939. The mouse is hiding out in a bookstore and runs into the aforementioned Bookworm. He then wakes up all the characters in the books to go after the dangerous mouse. Surprisingly not overly cute. The title card on this is hilarious. You can see where someone cut and pasted the Roman numerals for 1939, which means there's been a very crisp restoration on this one. Sniffles Takes a Trip was released on May 11th, 1940, this time written by Dave Monahan. City Mouse Sniffles heads out to the country, but can't get comfortable with all the woodland creatures glaring at him. This one's more than a little cloying. The restoration seems to be a little duller here, maybe because they left the backgrounds on the fuzzy side. It was the right call. The painted backgrounds would have been obliterated with too much cleanup. This was actually a bonus cartoon on Golden Collection Volume 6. I don't think it was restored there. The Egg Collector came out on July 20th, 1940, written by Rich Hogan and Robert Givens. See, didn't Sniffle just steal an owl's egg a couple of shorts back? I mean, it's literally the same general plot, only this time the Bookworm tags along. Couldn't he think of anything else to do with him? Restoration pops about halfway through from dull to really bright. Next is Bedtime for Sniffles, released on November 23rd, 1940. Perfect for a Christmas cartoon. It was written by Hogan and Ted Pierce. On Christmas Eve, Sniffles tries to stay awake to meet Santa. Cutesy factor, sickeningly high. Someone should have mentioned to the creators that waiting for something to happen doesn't necessarily make for gripping cinema, Sergio Leone excluded. And of course, it's over 8 minutes long. Nice restoration, but a few cell marks are still visible. This was a TBS Christmas special staple. Sniffles Bells the Cat was released on February 1st, 1941. Sniffles' gang is on the run from the cat, so they try to put a bell on him so they can hear him coming. Pretty clean restoration all around, but about halfway through, a hare shows up. This is one of the lesser shown Sniffles shorts, but it was recently on Tune In With Me. Toy Trouble came out on April 12, 1941. Sniffles and the Bookworm show up at Lacey's, a favorite Warner Brothers tune locale, and they head to the toy department where they end up on the run from a toy duck. They left all sorts of debris around the edges, and some of the cell marks are pretty bad. Probably deserved another cleanup pass. I remember this one from TBS quite a bit. Plus, this one has a special guest star. The Brave Little Bat was released on September 27th, 1941. Sniffles' car breaks down and ends up teaming up with a flying mouse, aka Bat. He's sort of recycled from another mouse character we'll see later in the bonus tunes, the really talkative one.
You mean your name is really Sniffles? That's a funny name. Why is your name Sniffles? What's a mouse? I'm not a mouse, am I? I'm a bat, aren't I? But you look like a bat. You look a lot like a bat. Is your name really and truly Sniffles?
There's another bad cut and paste job for the 1941 on the title card. But apart from that, this one looks the best out of all the shorts on the disc. Sniffles then disappeared for 2 years before returning in The Unbearable Bear, released on April 17, 1943, written by Michael Maltese. A fox tries to rob the house of a cop bear when he gets harassed by a very talkative Sniffles, now voiced by Marjorie Carlton. Chuck was smack dab in the middle of his experimental phase on this one, with the backgrounds that meld into the foreground. Now, I don't think I'd ever seen this one before this set came out. There's really wonderful restoration work that highlights the odd backgrounds. It took more than a year for the next Sniffles short, Lost and Foundling, released on September 30th, 1944, written by Ted Pierce, and yet another bad cut and paste job on the year. Sniffles ends up with a hawk's egg in his house, again with the eggs. And when it hatches, it produces the usual calamity, especially when they find out what a hawk eats. Sniffles is still in his very talkative mode.
Why, it's a little baby chick. A little tiny baby chicken. Why, it's the cutest little tiny baby chicken I ever saw.
Restoration is okay on this. I don't remember seeing it until TBS. The final Sniffles short is Hush My Mouse, released on May 4th, 1946, again written by Pierce. Edward G. wants mouse knuckles, see?
Listen, you mug, can the gab, see? Bring me them mouse knuckles, see?
So a poor schlub is sent to find a mouse and runs into the target of Sniffles. This is another one I don't think I ever had seen before this set came out. Now, once again, IMDb has a mix-up on this one. They have Sarah Berner doing Sniffles, and Dave Barry and Dick Nelson doing Edward G. Now, the Looney Tunes wiki site has Marjorie Tarleton doing Sniffles again, and just Nelson doing Edward G. I'm going to side with Looney Tunes wiki. They're on the ball. Restoration is a little on the drab side, to be honest. Disc 2 has all 7 of the Hubie and Bertie cartoons. Half of these were included on previous collections. First is the Aristo-cat, not to be confused with the Aristocats, or the Aristocrats for that matter.
He says, what do you call yourself? And they go, the Aristocrats!
It was released on June 19th, 1943, and written by Ted Pierce. A pampered rich cat drives his butler away, leaving him to fend for himself, while a couple of mice play on his insecurity. First, appearances of Hubie and Bert, as well as the yellow and red-haired Claude. Only here he's black and a lighter yellow. Another tune from Jones's experimental era. The backgrounds remind me of those mirrors at the end of Citizen Kane. It's like that bizarre. It's also similar to another Jones experimental era short, Wackaki Wabbit, in that the writers, Pierce and Michael Maltese, did the lead voices along with Mel doing Claude.
I want you should meet a friend of mine.
Yeah, sure.
Though I don't know, that sounds like Mel there. I don't know. This was originally on Golden Collection Volume 4, and both commentaries, one from Eddie Fitzgerald and the other by Greg Ford with Chuck Jones recordings, are included here. Now, I'd never actually seen this one until it came out on the Golden Collection. Terrific restoration done on this. Next is Trap Happy Porky, released on February 24th, 1945, also written by Pierce. Porky's got some house guests, so he tries all kinds of ways to get rid of them while they steal more of his food. Finally, a cat shows up to save the day, but after he gets rid of the mice, he invites his derelict cat friends in. Claude's still black, and we got a bulldog of the Spike Mike Butch iteration. The boys don't actually talk in this one. The Rube Goldberg contraption used to catch the mice is very similar to the one Sylvester used to catch Tweety a couple years later in Tweety Pie. I didn't see this one too much, maybe on Cartoon Network. This has a nice, clean restoration. Roughly Squeaking came out on November 23, 1946, written by Pierce as well. Hubie and Bert try to play mind games with the cat of the house, making him think he's a lion, and the dog is a moose. The mice's motif of mind games pretty much started here. In this one, Stan Freberg begins voicing one of the mice, Dick Nelson does the other. This is a pretty bright cartoon to start with, so the restoration just made it that much more. Now, I know I'd seen this one on TV somewhere before, I'm just not sure where. House Hunting Mice was released on September 6, 1947, written by Pierce and Maltese. The mice decide to move into a house tomorrow and all the goofy contrivances the writers can come up with. In this case, the main one is a robot that will clean up anything. Stan actually does the voices of both mice this time out. This was essentially a remake of the Two Curious Dogs cartoon, Dog Gone Modern. Restoration is okay, but the sound was a little muddy. This was originally a Cinecolor short, but the Blue Ribbon reissue was done in Technicolor. The original credits are online, but supposedly the company does not restore anything other than 35mm prints, and this one is from 16mm. This is another set of original titles we have to thank Thad K for. Don't ever remember seeing this on TV. Mouse Records was released on April 21st, 1949, written by Maltese. Hubie and Bert find a new house to live in if they can only take care of champion mouser Claude Cat. So they come up with all kind of ways to drive him crazy. Kind of strange that Claude is really an innocent victim in all of this. There's one particularly inventive sequence where they turn the whole room upside down. Take that, Fred Astaire. It ends a little abruptly. Greg Ford describes the gag that was cut. Claude comes back down the chimney and shoots back up on fire. This one was originally on Golden Collection Volume 2. Mel and Stan do the voices from here on out. This was also the first time the redesigned Claude showed up, so the restoration really pops the cat's new colors. Next is the Hypochondri-cat from almost exactly a year later, April 15, 1950, again written by Maltese. Hubie and Bert make their way into a house where Claude is a raving hypochondriac, so the mice play off it. This is from Golden Collection Volume 1. Jerry Beck's commentary from there is included. There's lots of greens in this one, so the restoration looks amazing. The final Hubie and Bertie cartoon is Cheese Chasers, released on August 25, 1951, and again written by Maltese. The mice are gorging themselves to sickness in a cheese factory to the point of where they can't stand the stuff. So they go to Claude and try to get him to eat them. A real outside-of-the-box thinking type of story by Chuck and the gang, though it bears some similarities to the first Sylvester, Life with Feathers. We also get a bulldog who looks very similar to Mark Anthony, who would show up about a year later. This is another from Golden Collection Volume 2. The restoration is decent, but not quite as eye-popping as a few of the others. There's a documentary on the history of mice in animation, just not including that one. There are storyboards for most of the Hypochondri-cat. As I mentioned, it also includes 11 bonus cartoons, all with, you guessed it, mice. All but one were done by other directors. They're also not restored compared to the others. The Country Mouse was released on July 13, 1935, directed by Fritz Freeling and written by Ted Pierce, who also does the voices. Remember, this is still pre-Mel. It's about a boxing mouse who has to do it behind his grandma's back. It's actually kind of similar to the early Popeye boxing short with the deep-voiced Olive Oyl. We get a couple of cameos by Beans and Porky. I almost said it the other way, but I couldn't do it without laughing. I think this was on every now and then. The version here isn't restored, but a cleaned-up copy showed up on MeTV's Saturday morning show, so it has been done. The Lyin Mouse came out on December 15, 1937, also directed by Frizz and written by Ted, who gets the first on-screen writing credit on a Warner short. Just not here because this is the blue ribbon. This time it's about a mouse who tells a story about how another little mouse saved a lion to stop a cat from eating him. Now, the story may look a little familiar to us since we've seen From Hand to Mouse on Collector's Choice Volume 2, especially this part.
Sucker.
Now, until this set, I've never actually heard of this one before. It was on HBO Max. It was gone. I believe it's back now, along with most of the others that they took off. That version was restored, but may have had an alternate soundtrack. The last 30s bonus is The Mice Will Play, released on New Year's Eve 1938, directed by Tex Avery, written by Jack Miller. It has a group of mice invade a doctor's secret laboratory and have fun until the cat shows up. Again, this was a new one for me on this set. Now, Avery had a clip of the original titles in his personal collection, but again, not in a way Warner's could do a restoration on it. But a couple of people have taken a shot. Here's what they look like up on YouTube. Now, to balance things out, these last three I would have put on the end of disc 1 since they're basically from the 30s and that's when Sniffles started. Now, we've had bonus cartoons from 1935, 1937, and 1938. As it so happens, I have the perfect extra they could have included from 1936. The Cat Came Back was released on February 8th, 1936, directed by Fritz Freeling. Family of mice go up against a family of cats until two of the kids get lost and have to help each other get back home. So, all is well in the end. Well, some things you just can't change. To be honest, I was actually surprised this didn't make the cut since it was on Channel 5 and TBS a lot. Of the older cartoons, it was probably second to I Love to Singa. Then I put I Only Have Eyes for You in third. But it is out there in restored form. It just needs a place to land. So now on to the next bonus, Little Blabbermouse, released on July 6, 1940, directed by Fritz Freeling, and written by Ben Hardaway, his last before heading over to Walter Lantz Universal. There's a travelogue type tune about a trip through a department store, specially made for mice. The title character is exactly as described, annoying the heck out of the W.C. Fields' tour guide.
And then up it goes, and there I was still standing here just like this.
The character's main trait later got transferred over to Sniffles, as we saw in the later tunes of him. This one was shown quite a bit in syndication and on TBS. Next is Shop, Look, and Listen, released on December 1st, 1940, also directed by Frizz, and this time written by Dave Monahan.
And Blabbermouse gets a title card.
The W.C. Field tour guide and Blabbermouse are back in another department store, picking up right where they left off,
With some of the same footage as last time.
Now, as opposed to the first one, I can't ever remember seeing this one on TV. Mouse Mazurka was released on June 11th, 1949, directed by Freeling and written by Pierce. Frizz tells the tale of a Slavic dancing mouse who runs into Sylvester. Told mainly through music and dance, Freeling hadn't done one of these in a while, so he was due. I remember this one all over the place, syndication, Saturday morning, Cartoon Network. In fact, I just saw it on the Saturday Morning Me TV show. Now, Jones and Maltese actually got a bonus tune here with Mouse Warring, but I'll hold off on talking about it since it was just announced for the upcoming Collector's Choice Volume 4. So do everything about it there since it's going to look better anyway. Mouseache Identity came out on November 16, 1957, directed by Robert McKimson and written by Pierce. Hippity Hopper escapes from the zoo and hides in a museum where Sylvester and Son are there to catch mice. You can pretty much guess the hijinks. Another one I saw at some point. We'll be dealing with all these Sylvester and Son cartoons probably next year since they're all in one place. Next is Mice Follies, released on August 20th, 1960, again by McKimson and Pierce. The Honey Mousers are back, this time Ralph and Morton, done by Dawes Butler as usual.
If Alice catches me coming in at this time of the morning, she'll really chew me out.
And Trixie's just liable to kick me out to boot.
Head home late after a lodge meeting and have to dodge the cat and their wives. I think this one was syndicated, but it might have shown up on Saturday morning too, probably sometime in the 90s. For the last two bonuses, we move into another era. It's Nice to Have a Mouse Around the House came out on January 15th, 1965. Oh, great, another mid-60s one. Yeah. This one was directed by Frizz Freeling and Hawley Pratt and written by John Dunn. Speedy Gonzales is causing havoc at Granny's, and Sylvester just can't handle him. So in comes pest controller Daffy. Now, to be honest, this one was probably among the high points of that period, having Daffy and Speedy meet for the first time, and it's pretty well done for that. They then just beat it into the ground the next 3 years. Finally, we have Merlin the Magic Mouse, released on November 18, 1967, directed by Alex Lovey and written by Cal Howard. A magician and his assistant perform for a cat. Now, it's weird hearing Dawes Butler go through his Hanna-Barbera voices in a Looney Tunes in the way pre-merger days.
Trick cards? Magic flowers? I don't see no rubber saw.
This is just one from kind of the bottom of the barrel. Thanks, Warners. I'll talk about this idea with another release, but I think the later characters like Merlin and Cool Cat really shouldn't be mixed in with the classic characters. They need to be dealt with on their own merits as a different product.
Now, it turns out Warner Brothers did try to integrate the later characters into the fold
with the Merry Melody Show, a syndicated offering from around 1972-1973. Here's a few of the title cards.
Oh, there's Nellie's Folly.
I don't think this was in New York. I don't remember seeing it, and I tried finding a listing, and I didn't see it on any of the channels. Now, back when this came out, one of the Amazon reviewers thought Chuck Jones's Mouse on 57th Street was supposed to make the set, but didn't. But we have it now, thanks to Collector's Choice. We also have the two other Chuck Jones shorts with mice in them from Hand to Mouse and Fair and Wormer. Now, notice how the mice look like Hubie or Bert. Now, for a second bonus cartoon with the bonus cartoons, there's a lot of mice tunes from the 50s, but I think the mouse that Jack built is the best of what's left. It came out on April 4th, 1959, done by McKimson and Pierce. This is basically an animated mouse version of the Jack Benny Show, complete with Jack, Mary Livingston, Don Wilson, the Maxwell, done by Mel Blanc as it was on the radio. And you wouldn't know it from watching the version Channel 5 showed through the 70s and 80s, but Rochester was here too. I guess they were worried about the stereotyping issue, but this totally misunderstands the relationship between he and Jack and does a real disservice to Eddie Anderson. He was a marvelous talent, a great comedian. His work needs to be seen more, not less. You can find this, complete with Rochester, on Golden Collection, Volume 3. Overall, I'm not sure if this was really the strongest idea for a set. I mean, I'm glad I got the Blu-ray of this, since it kind of acts as a bridge between the Platinum collections. It basically has the same mindset of complete runs of a certain character's cartoons. Maybe they thought there were just too many Hubie and Berts and definitely too many Sniffles to kind of fit them on a Platinum collection. However, they probably should have done those cartoons on one disc and then put the bonuses on the other, since they were in standard definition anyway. I don't know why they started with this concept, but they stuck with it for a little bit. It would have worked perfect here. Okay, now for a couple of stories. So why did Chuck Jones get fired from Warner Brothers to end up doing Tom and Jerry over at MGM? Well, we have to go all the way back to Hellbent for Election, the short we did in episode 3.5 and the bonus disc to Platinum Collection Volume 1. It was a UPA short done with Chuck's involvement. That studio really didn't matter too much back then, so it must not have been a big deal for Chuck to do something with him. However, by the late 40s, they finally struck gold, winning an Oscar for their new creation, Mr. Magoo. In the late 50s, UPA did their first feature-length film featuring Magoo, 1001 Arabian Nights. However, it wasn't a big hit at the box office. The studio's distributor, Columbia, had already decided to end their relationship with them in favor of a new one with a brand new company called Hanna-Barbera. So when it came time to make a second film, they ended up calling on their old friend Chuck, whose wife Dorothy came up with the script for Gay Paris. The film featured the voices of Judy Garland, Robert Goulet, Red Buttons, and the ubiquitous Paul Frees, who I don't think ever actually worked for Warner's. He worked everywhere but. As luck would have it, the film ended up being picked up for distribution by Warner Brothers, who then discovered Jones, who had an exclusivity deal with them, had broken that arrangement by working on the film. They fired Jones and his entire unit, but they all soon ended up over at MGM. And guess what? Gay Paris wasn't a hit either. Now, the Warner studio shut down in 1963 anyway, so it was likely Chuck would have gone off on his own in any case. Now, remember this intro? Yeah, the one from the Patty Freeling era tunes. Some of you have no idea how disappointing it was when you were watching a Looney Tunes show and this intro came up. To show you how universal this feeling was, I took a trip out to Detroit for my friend Susie's wedding right around this time of year in 1988. But so I didn't have to make it like all in one shot. I would stop off at my friend Tony's house in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, the home of Perry Como and Bobby Vinton. You probably never knew that. It was about halfway, so I could break the trip up into like 5 or 6 hour chunks. So I get to Tony's house around 3 in the afternoon. We're killing time, sitting around not doing anything. So we flip on the TV, see what's on. We go to the cable guide. Remember that channel? That's a relic from a bygone era. So we're watching it scroll through, and it gets to Nickelodeon. There's Looney Tunes on. They had just picked it up a few months before. So we're like, great, we flip it on, and what's the first thing we see? Yep, this intro. So it comes on, Tony goes, this is one of the new ones. Now, new being a relative term, even the newest of these tunes was 20 years old at the time. So we're sitting there all disappointed. His sister comes in, can I watch MTV? We're like, yeah, go ahead. So that does it for now. We're done with our multi-disc Blu-ray sets of original material anyway. We'll be doing another Blu release coming soon. Look for the promo a little after Thanksgiving, provided it doesn't slip. But next time we'll have a very special episode, a little different from what we've been doing so far. Next time, it'll be a recent Warner's release, not related to Looney Tunes, so get ready for that. I'm John Hartra. Thanks for watching. All right, now, blur.